Return to the book, Anacalypsis, an attempt to draw aside the veil of the Scythian Isis, or an inquiry into the origin of languages, nations, and religions by the late Godfrey Higgins. This is volume 2 from 1836. And we go right into page 1. Yeah, go to book 1, chapter 1. We're going to go in order here. It says here, the Saca, or Saxons. Okay, we already got a little bit of this drop in my series, Israel and the Nations of Europe. We learned it comes from the phrase sons of Isaac. Remember, Isaac is a son of Abraham. I shall in this chapter submit to my reader some observations relating to the ancient Sacae of Tartary, or North India. Tartary, huh? We have seen in volume 1 on page 153 that one of the most common names of Buddha was Sacae. All right, this is a major drop. Now, we kind of went over this a little bit in my series I mentioned earlier, but yeah, that's another name for Buddha, Sacae. He was a Saxon and son of Isaac. Buddha, the name of the Lama of Tibet, and Saca and Saca-sa. Those were all his known names. From this name of Buddha, it was that the tribes who inhabited an extensive country east of the Caspian Sea and north of Tibet were called Sacae. This was the hive whose castes are yet found in the west called Saxons, all right, same as the Saxons. Having, as Dr. Gidi says, the Hebrew language, all right, the Hebrew language. We're in a whole other book. We got a whole nother person writing a book and also quoting the source. As you guys can see, we go to number 1. It says here, from Dr. Wade, I learned that there are an immense number of Chaldean roots to be found in the Sanskrit list of tattoos, okay? And Chaldee, very related to Hebrew. These Chaldee roots are Hebrew roots also, and are, I have no doubt, in a very considerable degree, the origin or base whereon the Sanskrit was built. Sanskrit comes out of the mother tongue too, so-called Hebrew. And we have actually read that in other books. Who are the ancient Nagas that went over to India, right? All right, so again, Saxons, their language is Hebrew, the Hebrew language. They were the Belgic Saxons of Gaul, Saxons, or sons of Isaac. One of their capitals was Soissons, all right, sons, Sois, the sons of Isaac. They were called Saucen, again, sons of Isaac by the Welsh, Sacon by the Scotch, and Sassenach or Saxenach by the Irish. They are the people said by Herodotus to be the same as the Scythians, all right? So real quick, just as a reminder, we're going to go over this again. It says here, Anglo-Israel, or the Saxon race, proved to be the lost tribes of Israel in 9 lectures by Reverend W.H. Pooley. This is from 1889, and we go all the way to page 131. And it says here, first, as to the name Saxon, the dictionaries say it comes from Saxi, a short sword. But short swords or long knives were in use thousands of years before we hear of any such word as Saxon. In former times, this people were called Hebrews, then children of Abraham, then sons of Jacob, and children of Israel. But as we come down the stream of time, we find they are called sons of Isaac. In the closing books of the Old Testament, we find the new name. This also had been clearly revealed by God to Abraham when he made the promise, for he said, in Isaac shall thy seed be called. How in Isaac? Drop the letter I, which is very common in the East, and we have Sac. The letter C is often found turned to K and often to X. So we have Sax, which with their termination ons gives us Saxons, Isaac's sons. We just saw that, right? Dr. W. Holt J says the word Saxon comes from son of Isaac. By dropping the prefix I and adding the affix ons, he gives us Sac, 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 Sax, Saxen, Saxen, and Saxon. All right, we just went over these two in the last book. He shows that in most of the Eastern languages, sons of is written Sunia, as with us in Scotland. Mac means son of, all right, and so on and so on. So in the East, Saxunia means sons of Sac or sons of Isaac. All right, you guys get it? So then he gives you a list of different nations that are basically the same people. They're known as all these different names, but it literally all means sons of Isaac. All right, so I just wanted to read this again so you guys can see it's all the same. These two authors are saying the same thing. Let's go back to the book. So again, back in Anacalypsis, in chapter 1, they were called the Saxons by the Welsh, Sacae by the Scotch, all right? And then Herodotus says it's the same as the Scythians. Dr. Scheller maintains the whole of Europe to have been occupied by the Saxons before the arrival of the Celts. But listen to this. But they were in fact both tribes of the same people. Scythians, Celts, Saxons were successive castes or swarms from the same hive. If there were any difference, it was merely in the time of their arrival in the West into the British Isles, but it is probably that they were only different names for the same people, as the Britons are called English, Scotch, Welsh, Albanians, Caledonians, Cambrians, etc. The difference is their dialects. It's only what would naturally arise in unwritten languages in the space of 400 or 500 years. They were castes or swarms sent out in succession from a great and excessively populous hive in Tartary or North India. Remember where India Superior is. North America was part of North India or India Superior. Tartary, the country of the thousand cities of Strabo. They were exactly like the tribes sent out from Britain in modern times, at one time to America, at another time to Africa, at another time to Australia. They were the subjects of the only civilized nation on the earth. They took with them everywhere their manners, government, language, religion, and allegiance to their supreme head, as our colonies all retained their allegiance to the mother country. They at first nowhere found any of their own high caste, none in fact, but such persons as we found in America, aborigines as we called them, I, people original to the land. They met with no resistance, but by degrees, as the world became peopled with the successors of previous tribes of their own countrymen, and land scarce, wars for possessions began to arise. This I shall discuss, however, in my next book. The word Saca is the same as the Hebrew word ske, imaginati, and skill, to contemplate, and the Greek, in short, mind, constantly confounded with wisdom. The skiakam of Georgius is probably sakakim. The root is sak, whence came sakel, wisdom, and our skill. All right, skill. All right, saka is sax, and sakal or sakel or skill, or cunning or knowledge, or scientia, or wisdom, scientia, scientia. It all comes from what? The sons of Isaac. In any art is X or shaka, KL, which means the kal or wisdom of X, and KL is X 600, L50 equals 650, and the KLD is the origin, in its most remote degree, of the Chaldean or Chaldeans. Again, Chaldean, Caledonians, right? Chaldea, where is Chaldea? We're talking about ancient Chaldea, the real one. Check out my Ireland Ur of the Chaldee series. Caledonia, Chaldee, Chaldee, Chaldeans. I promise this explanation in book 11, chapter 1, section 1. Chalide, wisely. Cunning, right? Wise, cunning, king, incarnation of wisdom or cunning. The origin of the root Saca or KL I shall show when I treat of the origin of letters. I have no doubt that this root is, in fact, the same as the SG, when come SGH in the Latin saju, and saga, a witch, and sagacitas, presagio, or English sage, sagacious, presage, and the Roman officer called sagard, who was the sacrificer, and the Hebrew sagan, the assistant or advisor of the high priest. From this came the word SLT, Skalit, the name given to Joseph in Egypt, and the meaning of which I apprehend was wise man. Joseph was called a savior, and this word is the same as salus, salutis. The barbarian who marched from the north and plundered Jerusalem was a Scythian or Tatar or Tartar. He was called Shesak. This is nothing but Saxon or Sassenach. He was a son of Isaac. Get it? Pat is a name of Buddha. Mohammed was called a Saca or Sakseswara, as well as Vikramaditya. These are all merely descriptive epithets. And from the fact name above, we find the reason why the Mohammedans spared the statues of Buddha in India. It strongly confirms the doctrine of the secret religion of the Mohammedans. Muhammad was thought to be a renewed incarnation of divine wisdom, and of course, of Buddha and his 10th avatar. In the time of the pharaohs of the Egyptians, had a class of persons called sages or wise men, considering that Saca means Buddha, the god of wisdom. I cannot much doubt that the Irish Sagan or Sagan, a priest, the Scandinavian Saga or Saga, the Hebrew Sagon, noble or great man, are all the same. All right, it's all Hebrew. The heathen Irish had their Sagan, like the Tyrians and Chaldeans. Berosus gives the epithet of Sagan or Gisan to Noah. The Kohenia is the Hebrew word for a priest, a Kohen, and it is not unlikely that the Kaons, who are said by the Indians and Persians to have erected the druidical circles, had their names from this word. All right, again, these Kaons or Chaons are Kohen for priest. They were priests. That's all Hebrew. I think it probable also that the Kohen had a near relation to the Khan. And you already know that's right. Okay? Kohen is Khan. Priest kings. Yeah. Kohen Khan comes from the same root. Shout out to Drop Nation. Khan Drop. Drop Nation already been surfing the wave. There is scarcely a corner of the globe where the doctrines of wisdom may not, as a mythos, be found. My learned friend Eusebi de Salberti has clearly proved that by the sagas of the Scandinavians, the books of wisdom are meant, the word saga being the same as the French sagis and the Latin sagas. From the same author, page 395, it appears that the Rasanae or Rasanui can be nothing but children of Ras or wisdom. Ras. Thus, it is evident that to speak of the Sacae or Saxons was the same as to speak of the Buddhists. All right, it seems it's the same. It was the general name, as we call many sects of Catholics or Protestants, Christians. Who's the Protestants? From this, their sacred books were called sakas or sagas, as we call the books of the Indian Vedas or Vedas, or in fact, Buddhas or books of wisdom. This all agrees very well with the learned language of Kashmir or Kashmir, having been Chaldee, having been ancient Ireland, and it accounts for Dr. Geddes having found their language to be Hebrew. Again, so called Hebrew going down to the mother tongue coming out of America. Again, the true old world. So Hebrew and Chaldee, huh? Real quick, as a reminder, I'm going to read from this book. We read from this book way back, like 4 or 5 years ago. It's called Christopher Columbus and the Participation of the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese Discoveries by Dr. M. Kaiserling, translated from the author's manuscript with his sanction and revision by Charles Gross, PhD, Assistant Professor of History in Harvard College. And I'm just going to read a little bit right here, because when I say America's the true old world, I'm not just making this up. This is the reason why Columbus brought Luis de Torres. Who is Luis de Torres? Let me just start right here. It says, among the explorers, companions whose name have come down to us, the complete list is lost. Right? How convenient. There were several men of Jewish stock. For example, Luis de Torres, a Jew, right? These are all Sephardic Jews. who had occupied a position under the governor of Murcia, and who was baptized shortly before Columbus sailed. As he understood Hebrew, Chaldee, okay, again, Hebrew and Chaldee, and some Arabic, Columbus employed him as interpreter. As interpreter. Columbus knew this was the true old world. That's why he brought people who can speak Hebrew and Chaldee so he can communicate with the Indians. And Luis de Torres actually did, using Hebrew and Chaldean. So now we're going to go back to the other book. Remember, they're talking about Hebrew and Chaldee with the Sanskrit and all this other stuff. It's all coming from the true old world. Again, they was telling us here that this all agrees very well with the learned language of Kashmir, having been Chaldee, exactly what Luis de Torres spoke to speak to the Indians, and it accounts for Dr. Geddes having found their language to be Hebrew, all right? Just like Luis de Torres spoke to speak to the Indians. The Norwegian kings were called Hakuin. This is but Hakim or Hakim, and the substitute for the Jewish high priest was a Sagan. Closely allied to these is the Hebrew root KSP, an enchanter. KSP is literally two words and means SP and wise, and K as, that is, as a wise person, refer to volume 1. All right, and that's the pages to my explanation of Lakman. Anciently, all priests were physicians and were called Hakim, as physicians are yet called in the East, like a shaman, right? Healing, but he's also a priest. But this word always conveyed with it a sacredness of character. This is all in keeping with their gods, Odin, Woden, Thor, with the Budwas, Trigeranos in Wales, and the Old Man Buddha in Scotland. Old Man Buddha, huh? In Scotland? All these came with the first or the second tribe of Saxons to the north of Germany and to Britain. Strabo says all the tribes eastward of the Caspian Sea are called Scythic, the Dae next, the sea, and the Sacae more eastward. But every tribe has a particular name. All are nomadic. It is inattention to this which causes all our confusion. We have here the clans of Scotland and the tribes of Bedouin Arabs. The Sacae, pronounced in Sanskrit like our Sacae, have made in Asia eruptions similar to those of the Sumerians. Thus they possess themselves of Bactria and the district of Armenia, called after them Sakasina. This word, I believe, is only Sakas Ana, country of Sakas. I have no doubt that when nomad tribes were driven out of the lands which they loosely settled, they passed like the Israelites from Egypt through countries occupied by other tribes in search of new habitations till they could go no farther. Then a desperate struggle took place for the possession of the extreme country. Thus, Saxons arrived in Germany and Britain from countries the most remote. Again, from countries of most remote, very far. It appears from a note of Dr. Geddes on the word create in the first verse of Genesis to be seen, and his critical remarks on that passage that my view of this subject is supported by the Book of Wisdom, Justin Martyr, and Origen. He also shows that a passage in the book of Maccabees, which has been supposed to oppose my doctrine, has been wrongly translated. He also shows that in the Scoto-Saxon dialect, the word bra still retains its original signification. And in a note he says, he hopes he shall one day be able to prove that almost all our genuine Saxon words are either Hebrew, Chaldee, Arabic, or Persic. Again, that all our genuine Saxon words are either Hebrew or Chaldee, Arabic, or Persic, or Semitic. I am very sorry the doctor did not live to carry his intention into effect, which I am sure he could have done. I shall return to the Saxons again in a future book and give their history. which will be found to be of the very first importance. All right, and that was the end of chapter 1. I hope you guys found it interesting. It's real quick, but it's very interesting what it's saying, correlating a lot of the research we have done in a lot of the previous videos. Again, the Saxons are the sons of Isaac, but we're not just talking about a specific type of color, and definitely not just so-called white. The sons of Isaac were many. And we ain't done yet, guys. So even though we're done with the chapter and this topic, I got another little bonus for you guys since we were talking about Buddha, right? Now that we know he is Sacae, or a son of Isaac, and it all goes back to wisdom. Where did this wisdom originally come out of? Enjoy the bonus. All right, so there was again the book by Augustus Lefebvre. Thus, it is that we come to learn from the pen of an ancient Maya philosopher that the name of his people, once upon a time so broadly scattered over the face of the earth, had its origin in that of the country they inhabited, all right, the time of the word Maya, a place situated in the northern tropical parts of western continent, in that land of Kui, all right, where the sprout is, in Guatemala, that mysterious home of their ancestors, where the Egyptians thought the souls of their departed friends went to dwell, all right, the underworld, which was known to its inhabitants as Mayak, all right, Mayak, the land of Kui, a word that in their language meant the first land. The land just sprouted, the first land, all right, motherland, also the hard land, the terra firma, as we learn from the sign of aspiration, hardness, coagulation, place each side of the body of the calabash to indicate perhaps the rocky formation of its soil, and that it had withstood the awful cataclysms which swept from the face of the earth the land of Mu, and many other places with their populations. The priests of Egypt, Chaldea, and India preserved the remembrance of their destruction in the archives of their temples, as did those of the Mayak on the other side of the ocean. So real quick, I just want to go to the footnote here, talk about the land of Kui. It says 1 right here before we continue. And it says 1, right? Look what it says. It says, Sir Gardner Wilkinson, Manners and Customs of Ancient Egyptians, Volume 3, page 70. All right, get that. Kui land. All right, Kui land. According to the Maya language, the land of the gods, the birthplace of the goddess Maya. The goddess who? Maya, the mother of gods, of men, the feminine energy of Brahma, by whose union with Brahma all things were produced. All right, who is Buddha's mom? Maya. Her name is Maya, and his name is Watama. Guatemala. Guatama. We're talking about Guatemala, right? Being the sprout, the place where they all spring up, all those volcanoes creating land, the first land. All right? Look that up. That's in Manners and Customs of Ancient Egyptians, Volume 3. Talking about Kui land, according to Maya language, the land of the gods, the birthplace of all their gods, even in Egypt. All right, so real quick, we're in encyclopediabritannica.com. All right, and it says here, we're talking about Maha Maya, or the mother of who? Guatama, Buddha, Guatemala, Guatemala, Mahamaya, Maya mother, Maya, the mother of all the goddess, all the gods. Mahamaya, also called Maya, the mother of Gautama Buddha. She was the wife of Raja Shuddhodana, it says here, right? Gautama, Buddha, Guatemala, Guatemala, Guatemala or Gautama, Guatemala, all right? Guatemala, 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 Guatemala. What does it say here? The lost history of the little people. They're spiritually advanced. Now it says here, let me see, it says the key, the hub, had to be Central America. For all indicators mark it as one of the first colonies established from the motherland, the inundated Pacific lands. They're talking about Mu, right? The particular spot where they landed was Mexico. The capital city of the Quetzals was established thereabouts in Guatemala. And then says, what does it say?
Guatemala in parentheses, right? It's not just me correlating this. It's very old name of the Americas. Guatemala is a very old name of the Americas. One of the 5 landing places after the flood, hence Guatemala. All right, one of the landing places after the flood. These quetzals of milk white skin, Dash the hijack, were the first foreign settlers in Mesoamerica. Guatemala is the nation of the Quiche Maya people, and in South America, its cognate Quechua is the language spoken by their long-lost cousins, the Incas. All right, cousins of the who? Quiches, Quichua, Quiche, Quechua. Quechua, Cusco means navel, right? Cusco. All right.
And, we're back in the book Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx by Augustus Le Plongeon.
When Aryan colonists had not yet established their first settlements on the banks of the river Saraswati in the Punjab, and the primitive Egyptian settlers in the valley of the Nile did not fancy. All right, so they're telling you before any Hindu people or any people in Hindustan or anybody in the valley of the Nile or right there or the other side of Egypt or any Egyptian wherever Egypt was, they're saying that there was nobody there. There was not a fancy. Even their most hopeful daydreams that their descendants would become the great people whose civilization was to be the cradle of that of Europe. There existed on the western continent a nation, the Maya, that had attained to a high degree of culture in arts and sciences. All right. So before they could even daydream, all right, before them, before the Hindus, before the Egyptians, there existed on the western continent the Mayas. All right. It says here Valmiki and his beautiful epic, the Ramayana, which is said to have served as a model to Homer's Iliad. All right, you see? So Homer's Iliad came from the Ramayana. Tells us that the Mayas were mighty navigators. All right, so the Ramayana, all right, this is a Hindu book or epic or poem. All right, so we're in ancient history encyclopedia, just real quick, so we can get a reference, right, of what we're talking about. So the Ramayana, do you see the word Maya in it? What is the Ramayana? It's an ancient Indian epic composed sometime in the 5th century BC. All right, so they're saying it's supposedly more than 2,000 years old. All right, about the exile and then return of Rama, prince of Ayodhya. It was composed in Sanskrit by the sage Valmiki. All right, we just heard that name, right? So Valmiki, who taught it to Rama's sons, the twins Lava and Kush. Kush, Kush, like Kush, son of Ham. At about 24,000 verses, it is a rather long poem, and by tradition it is known as the Adi Kavya. Adi meaning original, and then first, Kadiya, or first poem. All right? So it's very old writing. Okay, so let's go back to Queen Mu and continue reading again. It said that Valmiki in his beautiful epic, the Ramayana, which is said to have served as model for Homer's Iliad, tells us that the Mayas were mighty navigators. All right, you can go verify that it's in there, and I did. Whose ships traveled from the western to the eastern ocean, from the southern to the northern seas, in ages so remote that the sun had not yet risen above the horizon. The sun was still not what? Oof! Wow, long ago. All right, remember, long ago. Paleo, long ago, far, far in the distant past, far, long, long ago. That being likewise great warriors, they conquered the southern parts of Hindustani. All right, that's what they call India today. It was called Hindustani. All right, that whole peninsula, they conquered it, right, and established themselves there. That being also learned architects. All right, since they were also learned architects, Toltecs, Maya. All right, they built great cities and palaces. All right, they're talking about what they did in Hindustan. These Mayas became known in after times under the names of Danavas. You hear that? Danavas. Danavas. All right, we're going to learn about that too. All right, and are regarded by modern historians as aborigines of the country or Nagas, as we shall see later on. All right, they're the aborigines of Hindustan. Who? The Mayas, who were known in Hindustani as the Nagas, the serpent people, the Amaru, Amarukan, plum serpent. The knowledge, serpent means knowledge. It doesn't always mean something bad. All right, so Danavas. All right, just want to go to the footnotes. All right, because we got a footnote here. They built great cities and palaces, and then we got number two. All right, so let's go to the footnote real quick. Now it says Valmiki in the Ramayana, and this is in volume 2, page 26. If you want to verify it, go ahead. This is an ancient text, remember, 2,000 years old. Epic Indian, all right? In olden time, it says, there was a prince of the Danavas, a learned magician meaning he who can build, architect, endowed with great power. His name was Maya, all right? That's in the Ramayana. This is quoting it. We're quoting it right here. It was he who, by magic art, with his magic art, constructed this golden grotto. He was the Vikakarma, architect of the gods, this guy named Maya, of the principal Danavans. And this superb palace of solid gold is the work of his hands. All right? Again, go verify that. That's in the Ramayana, volume 2. All right? Maya is mentioned in the Mahabharata as one of the 6 individuals. All right? The Mahabharata, we just got it. One of the most important of ancient Indian literature, or even the world, it told us, right? Right, in Ancient History Encyclopedia. All right, so Maya is mentioned there too as one of the 6 individuals who were allowed to escape with their life at the burning of the forest of Kandava, whose inhabitants were all destroyed. You hear that? Something happened. They got overtaken. Now we know, we've read before how that even in the Maya kingdoms they were warring against each other. They were taking over some, and they will, you know, destroy the whole city or town, take everybody, take the wisest prisoners. So this is maybe another part of this. Like, we're probably might be looking at the other side of the story, right, from the Hindus' perspective. So they're saying that this dude Maya in the Mahabharata, he was one of the ones that they were allowed to escape. Was he royal? He was allowed to be gone with their life at the burning of the forest of Kandava, whose inhabitants were all destroyed. All right. We read in John Campbell Ullman's work, The Great Indian Epics. Now, Maya was the chief architect of the Danavas, all right, chief architect, and in gratitude for his preservation, built a wonderful sabha, or hall, for the Pandavas, the most beautiful structure of its kind in the whole world, all right, that was built by Maya. Like the English of today, the Mayas sent colonists all over the earth, all right? The Mayas colonized the earth, okay? Again, the Mayas colonized the earth, including Africa. These carried with them the language, traditions, the architecture, astronomy, cosmogony, and other sciences, in a word, the civilization of their mother country. Brought civilization to the world, science, all right? It is this civilization that furnishes us with the means of ascertaining the role played by them in the universal history of the world, all right? It is to this people, the Mayas, all right? Credit is due with credit is due. It's not about, oh, the whole land was connected, but Kurimeo, the whole land was connected. Africa's still old origin, or is still an origin to certain specific things. And you got to give the credit where it's due, because if not, you're in the incorrect, or you're in the wrong orientation. You're seeing things in a whole different way. You're seeing it in reverse or backwards. You're in a spell. You got to break out of that, all right? Again, it is this civilization that furnishes us with the means of ascertaining the role played by them in the universal history of the world. The history of the world. We find vestiges of it and of their language in all historical nations of antiquity in Asia, Africa, and Europe.
Robin Dre, Beats by